According to archaeologists, the continent of Africa is the place where humans first evolved. The second largest of the world's land masses, Africa is divided into more than 50 separate nations with more than 3,000 different ethnic groups. Art, religion, and customs vary widely. Africa is also the home to a variety of wildlife, including elephants, lemurs, and zebras. Australia has the distinction of being the only country to occupy an entire continent. But because much of the interior climate and terrain is very harsh, most Australians live along the coasts, in cities such as Sydney and Brisbane. There is enough arable land, however, for Australia to rely on its pastures and farms for food and other agricultural products. Friendly people, dependable sunshine, water sports, and exotic animals help make tourism a thriving industry in Australia.
Many bacteria have one or more hair-like appendages called flagella. By rotating the flagella like a propeller, bacteria push themselves through the medium at a very respectable rate. A few bacteria have developed a less vigorous alternative to flagella. They glide along on a slippery layer of mucus, much like a snail. You are looking at an area of tissue about the size of the head of a pin. You can see a small artery entering the field from above. Branching off from the small artery are very tiny blood vessels called capillaries, the smallest blood vessels in the body. They are so small that the red blood cells can barely squeeze through them and have to travel through in single file. Like minorities in many countries, black Americans traveled a long, hard road to obtain their civil rights. Dr. Martin Luther King served as leader during much of the civil rights movement. He believed in nonviolent protest as a means to achieve recognition and rights for all black Americans. Despite peaceful tactics, demonstrators often bore the brunt of brutal confrontation. In August 1963, more than 200,000 marchers, both black and white, took their case to the nation's capital. Over the next 2 years, Lyndon Johnson signed the Civil Rights Act and the Voting Rights Act, reaffirming the rights of black citizens. Germany is home to the Bavarian Alps, the Black Forest, and well-known rivers such as the Danube and the Rhine. Some of the world's best white wines come from Germany's Moselle River Valley. The home of such renowned composers as Bach, Beethoven, and Brahms, Germany is revered for its rich history of classical music. Modern industry and architecture have replaced many old ways of life, but they can often be seen side by side. The most infamous icon of modern Germany was the Berlin Wall, which separated East and West Germany from 1961 to 1989. The countries were reunited in late 1990.
Abraham Lincoln's first home was a one-room log cabin with a dirt floor. His final home was the White House. Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, is remembered for freeing the slaves and preserving the unity of the United States following the American Civil War. He personifies the American ideal that being born into poverty should be no deterrent to success. Lincoln is immortalized as much for his character as his deeds. Bishop Simpson, giving Lincoln's funeral oration, explained why people revered Lincoln. They saw in him a man who they believed would do what is right, regardless of all consequences.
During World War I, Tsar Nicholas of Russia was forced to abdicate. His ill-equipped army had faced constant defeat at the hands of the Germans and finally mutinied. Weary of war, the Russian soldiers returned home only to find a countryside gripped with hunger. Food riots and strikes broke out. The Bolsheviks took advantage of the widespread unrest. Promising land to the peasants, they seized power. Under Lenin, a military dictatorship was established, with once private land and industry controlled by the state. Calling for an international revolution, Lenin urged workers everywhere to overthrow their governments and sweep away the system of Western capitalism. Hitler's invasion of Poland in September 1939 ignites World War II. One by one, Europe's nations fall before Germany's mechanized armies. Only Britain holds firm.
I have nothing to offer but blood, tears, toil, and sweat.
To stem the aggression of Germany, Italy, and Japan, Allied nations joined forces. On December 7, 1941, Japanese planes attacked Pearl Harbor. The next day, the United States enters the war.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. With confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination of our people, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God.
Fighting continues for almost 4 more years, spreading to North Africa and the Pacific. On D-Day, June 6, 1944, British and American troops begin the liberation of Europe. Within a year, Germany surrenders. To subdue Japan, the United States drops atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Japan surrenders the next day. World War II cost more than $1 trillion, over 27 million lives, and untold human suffering.